All right. Well, happy Friday. It's what, the 16th or so, 16th, 17th of March. That's Friday, right before St. Patrick's Day weekend. So today we have an awesome guest today, Christopher Wilson. As an agent in our company, he also has an just amazing background that we are just sometimes in awe over some of the things that he's done. He's also recently married and has a new baby. So he's got a lot going on. So Chris, we'll let you maybe take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and real estate and some things you've done in the past.
Yeah, thank you. So I moved to. I'll kind of give you like the overall background. I moved to Colorado back in 2010, and since then I've kind of been in a number of different industries. I was in the building products industry, the multimedia industry, and recently, in the past 5 years, I started a company with a friend of mine. We would run charity golf tournaments, corporate golf outings, and ran that for about 4 years. And then kind of pivoted my focus. I really wanted to dive into real estate and really just get a better overview of the market. I know for myself, a personal goal is to own multiple rental units, and that was kind of myself and my wife's goal for the future here. So wanted to have my foot in the door, and certainly wanted to be a part of a good brokerage like Windermere. And obviously Andrew knows I had done some multimedia for Andrew and his listings in years past. And so, as I was looking to get licensed, I think Windermere was kind of my first stop. And, I'd been around you and Andrew for years. So that's kind of what sparked my interest in the first place. And that's what really drew me to Windermere. So been at it since October, so not too long, but really starting to gain traction. And so far that's kind of my only background in real estate up to this moment, but certainly with an active listing and some potential buyers and a buyer under contract, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there sure is. I mean, and you got married and you got a new baby.
We
So
did, yeah. We got married, and we found out we were having a boy. We have a boy named Ralph now, and he's not sleeping through the night, but Andrew knows all about that, so I won't bang that
It's been
drum
a
too loud.
tough
right.
couple
And
of
man, I
weeks
tell
here,
you,
but
all of both of you gentlemen have just managed. Andrew's a new father as well, and have really managed the business as well as family stuff and being a new father is really, really well. So I've noticed that from the outsides, and I can only imagine some mornings are incredibly difficult. So
Yeah,
good for you.
it's definitely a little difficult, but I think I think back to when COVID first hit and everybody was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? We're going to work from home. And a lot of people really took that, in stride. Some people took it really difficultly. I think for a lot of people working from home, it's something, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said about being a realtor and having the discipline to do what you need to do when nobody else is looking at you or telling you what to do. I mean, we have you as an owner and Andrew as a managing broker, which is fantastic. But at the end of the day, nobody's sitting here at home telling me what I need to do or making sure that I'm doing it. I had worked from home. I think this would essentially be like my 9th year doing it. So I think a lot of it is just discipline and learning over time. But certainly that comes into play when you have a baby who's crying all night or not sleeping all night, and then you know what you have to do. And it's very easy to look at the clock and say, I could sleep until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I think that would be great, but there's a lot going on, and priorities. So
Right. Well, again, you guys, both of you are handling it really, really well. So, Chris, one of the things that we've known each other now for a little while. You've known Andrew a little bit longer than me. Some things maybe that you're doing that's maybe different. So, for example, there's a few tools that we have in our office that you have just embraced from a technology perspective? And I would probably even argue, Andrew may keep me honest here, you might be just so far ahead of your peer group, not only in our office, but just in the Denver metro area, just being creative. Talk a little bit about that, those tools and what you're doing with them.
Sure, sure. So one of the tools, I think kind of the foundation that I started with was trying to figure out Moxie a little bit, which is, Windemere's CRM tool, which is fantastic. It's a great online tool. It's a good resource. What I did was I paired that with Follow Up Boss, which I also use, which then I paired with HomeBot. And then I use third-party integrations like Zapier to kind of manage the incoming lead flow. So originally designed, Moxie's a really good place and a good platform to put in all of your co-brokers, all of your, lender partners and your title friend, anybody that in real estate, as well as leads and current clients, active clients. What I started doing was I started diving into HomeBot instead of as like a retention tool, really kind of trying to use that as a prospecting tool, sending out these home digests to people that I don't know. And then, as they're opening them and viewing them and asking and reaching out for more market insight, I'm then kind of calling and trying to nurture that relationship, which at that point, then I put them into Moxie as a lead or as a potential future client. So what I'm doing is just kind of more of an organic, I would say more of an organic kind of ground up approach. And so I'll funnel leads from Facebook, HomeBot, and, like my Pixel through my website. I'll funnel all of those into Follow Up Boss, where they're automatically nurtured, they're reached out to, and then as they convert, they're going into Moxie. So, by definition, converting not meaning that they're going under contract or that they've agreed to something or want to sign, but nurturing those to the point where somebody says, what, I am interested in selling my home, or I'm interested in buying a home. It could be 2 years from now, it could be 2 days from now. So I really dove into the book called The Conversion Code. And I don't know if you guys have ever read that, but it's a fantastic book. It's all about online lead generation. It's really, really analytical and it's really in depth. For a while there, I thought there was no way that I was going to be able to break all of that down. But when you piece it out step by step, it really does work. And so I think for myself, going in, having those steps organically laid out. So the Facebook, the HomeBot, funneled into Follow Up Boss, nurtured, funneled into Moxie. It's really starting to pay off. And truthfully, I've only done it for a couple of months, but the first month of me being really eager and calling some of those leads and people having zero interest versus 2-3 months into it where they've been opening or they've been looking at ads, and I call and all of a sudden maybe 1 out of every 10 calls is somebody who says, I think, I'd be willing to meet up with you and kind of chat about this. So that's kind of the way that I'm playing it. I know it's a longer game and I have other prospects that are certainly more of a fast sales cycle, and I know they'll be a little more streamlined, but I think this is a really good approach for laying the foundation for a further pipeline, which is exactly what somebody like myself who's new needs. We all know real estate's such a roller coaster. You're going to have really hot months, you're going to have really hot quarters, maybe years, and then there's going to be somewhat of a drought maybe here and there, maybe there won't be, but for myself, that's certainly something I'm trying to avoid.
Definitely, and I think you're doing a good job of kind of having like a good game plan that you're following, and you've mentioned some really great tools and the way you're utilizing them in kind of a unique way. Can you maybe break us down into like what your daily and weekly routine looks like? Right. So on what days are you spending uploading these potential leads? On what days are you spending doing outreach? What times are you reserving to do actual like property showings or listing meetings? Like, so do you have that pretty well planned out, or are you kind of just making that as needed? What's like a day in the life look like? I guess.
Yeah, I think really from week to week, it kind of changes. But I think the foundation of my week really looks like, organizing new leads in the morning, really doing a lot of the back end office stuff in the morning. Really I've been doing cold calling for so long in all of my different industries throughout sales that, learning what times are great, what times aren't. I've found right now, usually about 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. is really successful for the calls that I'm making. That was different a month and a half ago. I was really calling from
Mhm.
noon until about 4, and that just wasn't really cutting it. So I would say right now, what the days look like are typically getting going with some back end office work, trying to fine tune some of the ads that I have, looking at the insights, making adjustments as needed. And then what I do is I try and call 10 new brokers a day. A lot of times I don't get in touch with any of them. There's some days where I get in touch with 2 or 3 just to make an introduction. In every industry that I've been in the past, it's always supporting partners or even competition that really helps to keep you grounded. And so I think developing those relationships over time is going to be fantastic. So I do a lot of the back end office work in the morning, call 10 new brokers after that, usually go into a lot of the follow-up that I have. So if it's any emails, texts, potential voicemails that I've gotten, whether it's brokers, potential buyers for a listing, you name it, all the way through to the end of the day, where then I typically get into some of the cold calling on some of those leads through HomeBot. And then just kind of repeating the cycle the following day and making adjustments where needed.
Sure, and that's all incredible stuff, right? And I feel like this is a common feedback or pushback, depending on how you want to characterize it, I suppose. I hear from new agents and experienced agents just that fear around making the call to even maybe people who are already in their sphere, let alone cold calling or trying to do some prospecting to add people to their sphere. I come from a cold calling background as well, so I just had to get over that fear really early. But are there some maybe tips or strategies that you've used to help yourself overcome kind of the psychological game around picking the call and calling a stranger? Or there's some strategies that you could kind of help maybe an agent who hasn't had as much experience with that put into place? They maybe could have some more successful initial calls and not have it be such a source of fear.
Yeah, I think a big hesitation around people cold calling isn't the fear of talking to somebody that they don't know. It's a lot of it, I think, comes from a lack of knowledge and a fear that they just don't know what they're talking about, or maybe they'll be asked a question that they have no clue how to answer. And I found this with every industry that I've been in. The more you talk about it and the more you're involved with it, the more you sound and act like a professional, right? So it's practice makes perfect. Um, I have talked to brokers where they've asked like how many years I've been doing it. I told them only since October of last year. Like, oh my gosh, well, it sounds like you've been doing it for so long. But truly, the only reason that is because I've just spent every day talking to people who are in the industry. So learning the language and learning the lingo and, understanding how the process works from start to finish. I don't know everything, obviously. There's a lot of things I have no idea, but I really try to make an effort to learn and pick up on, the way that experienced brokers and managers, how they carry themselves and how they talk about listings and how they talk about properties and the market. And so I think for new agents looking to get on the phone and really cold call, it's just it's just trial and error. It's really just, I know it sounds, very basic, but it's just getting over that hurdle and that fear of, calling somebody who's going to scream at you to never call them again. And at the end of the day, you just have to, hey, I'm trying to provide you with, with a service and with quality insights about the market. If you don't like that and you don't like me and you don't want anything to do with me, that's okay. I don't know you. I've never talked to you before. Sounds like we certainly will never talk again. Now, I've also had people that I've cold called that are like, not interested, hang up, call them again a couple weeks later, not interested, hang up, call them again a couple weeks later. This happened last week. Called somebody and they're like, what did you say your name was? Tell them Christopher Wilson. They're like, I get emails from you and that's all I need from now. And to me, I'm like, that's a great start because they've been telling me for the past, month that they didn't want anything to do with me. Now they'll maybe open the HomeBot emails a little bit more. And then eventually, if that ever turns into something fantastic. So I would say for any of the new agents looking to better themselves from a cold calling angle and really truthfully like trying to perfect that, I never write a script. There's some people that only go off script. I think that's terrible because you just never know how somebody's going to react or how somebody's going to answer your question. I would just think about what you want to say, try and craft something that's, a really intellectual dialogue, something that you're going to be able to carry a conversation with somebody. And 90% of the time, you're never even going to get to that point anyway. Somebody's going to shut you down or they're not going to answer. So I think that's a really good starting point for new agents is just making the calls and getting better at it. Your first one's going to be terrible. You just work from there.
I totally agree. It's an acquired skill like anything else, and I think it's important to kind of keep, at least from my experience, keep perspective on everything. Like I'll ask both you guys have both made cold calls in this industry and others. What is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen?
Yeah, the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody's going to
exactly
they're
they
going to
hang
hang
up.
up. Yeah, exactly.
Is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to you.
Yeah.
If you accept that as a potential circumstance you're going to be in, then you're okay. What's the best thing that could possibly happen?
Might get an appointment.
You make a sale, right? Maybe you list a place and buy a place. Maybe so if you're willing to weigh those odds and make a few dials a day, do it, man. Like it's an acquired skill. And I think one thing I would add to what you said, Christopher, I think was really great is it is okay to say to a potential client, I don't know the specific question you're asking me.
Right.
But I tell you what, I have a ton of resources at my fingertips here. Let me go ahead and do some research on that because it's a specific question that I want to give you a specific answer to. Can I give you a call back tomorrow or on Wednesday or on Thursday at this time? And I'll have a really detailed answer for you if that sounds okay, sir or ma'am,
Yep.
I mean, I think that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, somebody said to me when I was a young realtor one time, and pick your favorite sports team, right? But your favorite sports team doesn't practice on Sunday. They practice all week, right? They don't just go out there and figure it out. We tend to do that in our business. We tend to practice our pitch in the living room over and over and over again, nationally, right? So I think it's important to do that. A couple things that we do, too, like, Andrew has his masterminds, biweekly mastermind. And part of that process is to work through some of this dialogue and to give you tips and conversations. I know last Tuesday we had a guest, and an individual gave us some really good tips for first-time home buyers, right? And some of them we hadn't necessarily heard in that manner. We had heard them in general speak, right, about timeframes and refinancing and dates, but he put some hard numbers to it and some hard dates to it. And even me, I'm going year 16. Some of this stuff is very new. Andrew and I recently attended a broker open in Colorado, and we learned a few things from a title rep that we thought it was a certain way. So you're right. We're constantly learning. The business shifts and changes in different ways because of what's around us. But at the end of the day, it's a relationship business, a people business. The product happens to be a house, right? And I think being able to be a consultative and really be there for people is okay. And Andrew's right. I've had many conversations where it's like, I'm really not sure exactly how that's going to work. Let me get back to you on that, but let's make sure that we hit all of these bullet points too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what I've learned too, especially in the past couple of months, is just it's relationship management is all it is. I mean, that's literally real estate 101 is just relationship management. And,
Mhm.
much like with any other business, if you have a great relationship with a client or a customer, maybe you stumble here and there and you don't know the answer to something, or maybe you have some faults in a certain department and you're like, I don't really know, I'm going to have to check on this. The customer is usually going to say, or the client's usually going to say, that's okay, like go and figure it out, I trust you, I know you. And so that's what I've really been trying to focus on. And it's a hard thing to focus on when you're talking about somebody who you don't know, or maybe you're just making calls. But really the first touch is what's going to lay a lot of the groundwork for future relationship management. So
Yeah.
that's another little tidbit.
Yeah, and I think, last week we had an opportunity to attend an event, an industry event, and there was a couple of common themes. And one of those themes was that engagement with his or her sphere, right? Regardless of who's going to try to penetrate that, but just engagement in that relationship. The other piece was that there's not a silver bullet. There's no magic pill you take. There's no magic website, but it is about offering value and really enhancing that sphere and igniting one's sphere. We all have people in our lives, and sometimes we don't think about it, like our insurance person or the person that services your car, your dry cleaner. I mean, we all have people in our lives, right? As well as our friends and family and things and everything else. But about serving in a place of service first. All of the other things will fall into place if we're doing the right things, right? And I think that
Right.
because of things like social media, because of email, because of TV shows, I think some of this gotten a little bit out of whack to go back to as a new agent, right? Because we talk to a lot of new agents, and a lot of them, first question out of their mouth is, well, how many leads am I going to get every day? And Andrew's like 0, things
Yeah.
like that. Or how many, like, when do I get my first check? I mean, they don't understand the sales process, right? So
Sure.
there's also a reason why we want people too, as they're making these transitions, to be able to leverage what they have. You successfully did that, right? You
Yep.
successfully had a business you were part of. You had some dates and goals. Arguably those maybe have shifted, but still you were making a transition. You didn't just wake up one day
Right.
and go, I'm out. And I
Yeah.
think people need to understand that to be very successful as well.
Yeah. And I think learning, really learning what the sales cycle is like, things shift, things change all the time. And I think there's a lot of people that get into real estate and they really do think that it's like, by next week, somebody's going to call me and want to buy $1 million house. And then we're going to close perfectly. Nothing's going to go wrong. And then I'm going to pick up a check and it's going to be fantastic. Real estate really kind of mimics a lot of the businesses and industries that I've been in the past, where it's like your sales cycle, nothing is secure until you close and until everything's closed up and everything's good to go, which is such a, it can be frustrating, I'm sure, but that's just another point and another reason why like relationship management is so important. It's managing the transaction, but managing your clients first. And so if you get to that closing table and something goes wrong, instead of just giving up and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, this is terrible, you want your clients to have enough trust, and they want you to feel empowered by you to say, you know what, this didn't work out, let's get back out there, we'll make something else work. And I think it's really easy as a new realtor to just kind of look at the cycle and think, oh my gosh, like it's impossible. Like I thought this was something totally different, thought it was going to be a quick close, thought I was going to be rolling in money in the first 6 months. And a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of new brokers that are like, well, I haven't done a single deal and it's been 6, 7, 8 months. And it's like, well, that's, I think that's pretty common. And I think at the end of the day, you just have to think of your first year as really a base and a foundation, and you're just kind of learning the process and understanding how it works. And then before you know it, some of these relationships that you have will lead to business.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I agree, but also I would say, you're, proof positive that if you have a plan and you work towards that plan and make sure that you're executing the steps on the way, you can single-handedly fast track your own performance, right? Like you've been doing this since October. You have an active listing, you have an under contract buyer, you have a handful, 2 to 4 other buyers that are actively shopping right now. You didn't stumble upon this. This wasn't something that was lucky.
Right.
These weren't like pre-standing relationships. We have people that are like, oh, hey, I'm going to sell my house. Wait till you get your license. Like you did work.
Right. Right.
And so I think that that's an important thing to make sure that we're articulating to the people who are graduating from real estate school now is 2 things you touched on is you have to take the advocacy role very seriously. That means you have to take your client's interest above your own. And that's going to cement these relationships long term where it might be the best position for your client to take a step back. I mean,
Right.
Look what happened with this SVB bank. There's going to be people who are probably need to see, like, I know people personally who's like are getting emails from their boss saying like, hey, we can make payroll this week, but until we know what's happening in this bank, we don't know if we can make it 2 weeks from now. Right.
Right.
So that person probably wouldn't put themselves in the best position by going and buying a house. Right. So maybe we need to take our advocacy role seriously. It's like, hey, well, let's take a break for a second, figure out what's going on here so you can be comfortable. And then of course you can make sure that your entire, mortgage isn't resting on making that one sale by marketing, outreaching, making cold calls, making connections to buyers, other agents, or industry partners, all the things that you're doing so that you have spread your work set over a much wider plane instead of like expecting inbound leads like you're talking about. So I think you're right, but I think you need to give yourself a little more grace for what you're doing, man, because it's not
Sure.
I love what you're doing, but it's not impossible. You're just choosing
No.
to do it,
Yeah, it is not impossible. And one little thing that I would say in regards to cold calling and that aspect of the business, I think funneling any leads or lead list that you have through something like HomeBot, or some other API that's nurturing those leads, I think once they're nurtured to the point where you have a response or some indicator to call them is a huge time savings. I mean, I have talked to brokers that are like, I've made 200 calls in the past like week, nothing out of it. And I'm like, you're right. I don't do that because I know how that goes. And I know that you can spend 8 hours a day on the phone. I would really encourage anybody who's really going to try and get back out there prospecting through cold calling to funnel those leads or that lead list through another service or software where you can figure out who would potentially be a warm lead. And that alone saves me 25, 30 hours a week.
Yeah. The other piece to that, and we've talked about this too, is we have tools at our disposal if we leverage them correctly, right? So the first example that comes to mind are things like social media. So when people take that amazing vacation, what a great reason to call, right? But you're not going to prospect them the week that they're gone because they're not there, right? But when you get back, it gives you something to talk about, right? I've noticed that you and your wife have started to drip some pictures of Ralph. Well, the people that weren't in your day every day, that would be your reason to reach out. It's not a business call. Right? Most of my conversations, I do a 555 program. Most of those phone calls are not business at all. They convert into that kind of randomly, but sometimes they never do, right? But it secures and solidifies the relationship, as well too. So, but you're right. Those are reasons to reach out where you have that connection. Where you don't, it's more about what's happening in the market. Andrew's right. This thing that happened last Thursday, Friday morning is a bad deal. And today looks like Signature Bank was seized today. So I think you're going to see a few things, and people are going to be in a little bit of panic mode, right? But at the same time, part of that is you've got people wrapping their arms around it. And that's why we have great lenders. We have great title companies. You have good company, good transaction coordinators. So if a client finds themselves in one of these situations, we can help navigate that, right? If we need to give, especially if they're under contract, if we need to shift a day or two, right? Or until we get some clear answers. But those things will happen to people. It's out of our control. But I think it's really important to stay calm and navigate the best way we can through all of that too. So.
Yeah, I agree.
So Chris, what do you think? I noticed a little bit, you and your wife seem to live a lot of Colorado stuff. You seem to embrace a lot of Colorado, even not being from Colorado. What are some of the things you guys like to do? What's the fun stuff?
Well, so I'm a huge snowboarder. Really love it. Love skiing too. I'm very excited for the future and getting our son up on skis and a board. My wife, not so much. However, she does, but oddly enough, she loves to read. And so if we go skiing together, she'll sit in the lodge, read, hang out, have a cocktail. I'll ski. So that's fantastic. But we really enjoy kind of cruising around to different places, and just enjoying, like, whether it's a mild hike and some scenery, something like Estes Park, all the way down to like the Broadmoor in the Springs, just popping in there. We tend to go up to the mountains quite a bit. So whether it's Beaver Creek, Vail, just go stay, hang out. I love obviously skiing, snowboarding is great, but ski towns in the summertime are fantastic here. If you ever get a chance to do like Oktoberfest in Vail, Beaver Creek, that's always amazing. Some of the concert series up there, absolutely incredible. Other than that, it's usually a lot of stuff for me in the winter. Like I play ice hockey up at Evergreen Lake quite a bit. And then in the summertime, obviously indoor leagues here and there. But yeah, just kind of a mix between, we do a lot of hikes together, we golf together, love golf, obviously pretty avid golfer, but yeah, I would say golf, hockey, skiing, it's kind of a good mix, and brewery hopping. So it's fun. So yeah.
You like pub crawls and all that stuff? Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I love a good pub golf too. I haven't done that in a while, but
yeah,
huge fan of that. So
Very
yeah.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so Andrew, what else do you have for Chris?
I mean, like I said, man, we've known each other for a while, so and I know you did do some, you did some digital media work for me and for some other realtors. So I know you have, I'm not the only realtor you know, right? So I want to know what kind of made you decide to come partner up with us here at Windermere. You have a great skill set, you have a lot of options, want to know what kind of made you lean our way on that decision.
Yeah, it seemed like to me, Windermere, one, obviously seeing you guys there and you being there for so long, I think that was a really big indicator for me of, joining a brokerage. I look at, I know realtors like at Sotheby's and the agency and some other brokerages around town, and some really amazing names in real estate, of course. But I think for myself and being new, I wanted to work with people who had been in the industry for quite some time, who were knowledgeable about it. Looking into Windermere, I mean, such a huge brokerage, especially on the West Coast, and expanding, which is fantastic. So I wanted to be a part of a team that had, the resources that I needed to lean on in order to grow. I wanted to be part of a company where culture was still a pretty big deal, and it seems like it really is with Windermere. I mean, there's unlimited resources. The company is growing and seeing realtors that have been at Windermere for so long, I think was a kind of a green light for me. I wanted to be a part of a team where I didn't want to be the broker that in 5 years time has worked at 6 or 7 different brokerages. I was thinking about that and I was like, oh my gosh, I was new into it. And I'm like, all the steps that you have to go through and all the onboarding that you have to go through at each brokerage, certainly that's not a reason to stay somewhere where you're not a good fit. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine hopping around. And I can see it from a side of not liking the brokerage or not having the support that you need. But for myself, joining Windermere, I think that was the the best move, especially for somebody who really didn't know anything about the industry, or a lot about the industry prior to joining. I think Windermere has been a great tool. It's been a great resource. But from an really from a higher level too, if there's anything that I needed, I know that I could call somebody who's been a part of Windermere for 20 years, 25 years and say, hey, what do you think this looks like for me? And have any answer that I would need. So that was really kind of a determining factor for me joining Windermere.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. It's great to hear. I appreciate that, Chris. And
Yeah.
we learn something from you regularly. So I think that's also a good relationship too. Andrew, I think this one would be, Chris would really benefit by maybe attending like symposium or a homecoming with like we did last year, and really meet a lot of his peers across the country, and get some of their perspective as well. So maybe it's a goal we can put for you either in 23 or 24, one of the two.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, I agree. We had a great experience, obviously meeting some of the larger team and some of the people who, we have our shop's been around for a few years here, but there's some, to your point, back in like the Washington, Oregon, California regions that have been around for, you're talking a couple, 2 or 3 generations of owners, right? So those are always really impactful relationships for me to forge when I'm back there meeting some folks. So I think that's really great for you.
Yeah.
Well, and that's turned into some great business for us, Andrew. I mean, we're juggling what, 4 or 5 inbound referrals right now. Just, and some of it they didn't know our growth, right? From Boulder down to Colorado Springs. And so I think that was huge for us. It's those little things that sometimes you don't know when you're doing it until you get out there.
And then the other way as well, I know I have a few people that are moving in and around the Seattle area. So it's always nice to be able to kind of refer them to someone that I've met and shook hands with and have forged a relationship with, and know they're going to be well taken care of. When it takes a lot of trust for me to refer, especially someone that's like a friend or a family member or a past client to someone, so I think it's good to be able to really connect with that person and feel confident in making that referral. So I think it's good to have that relationship both ways.
I agree.
Well, great. Well, we want to be respectful of your time and try to keep this. Is there any final thoughts at all that you have?
No, not really. I think this is great. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you guys doing this. I think there's a whole bunch to learn, and I would certainly be curious to do this again with you guys in like a year down the road, and how much things have changed from then.
Yeah, we will absolutely do that. So I hope you guys, both of you, have an amazing St. Patrick's Day coming up.
Yeah.
Be safe out there. I know you got newborns, but doesn't mean you can't kick back a few at home, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, peace out.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Hang up.